Hi there, you've reached S.J. Thomason with Christian-apologist.com. I'm going to talk a little bit about a video that I watched relatively recently with Ravi Zacharias and Ben Shapiro. Actually, Ravi Zacharias appeared on the Ben Shapiro show, and he spent a lot of time actually talking about some of the values and merits of Christianity. I found his approach rather interesting. As you may know, Ben Shapiro is Jewish, so the approach that he used were to bring in some of the commonalities between the Old Testament and the New Testament and some of the common figures spoken of from the Old Testament in the New Testament. Ravi used what Aristotle has called ethos, pathos, and logos as a method of persuasion. Ethos refers to establishing credibility, and Ravi did that by speaking of his heritage. Pathos refers to telling a story or establishing a common bond, and it should generate emotion. And Ravi also does this when he refers to Moses. And then you'll see the third approach. He's going to call on the logic behind moving from the 613 laws of the Old Testament into the New Covenant. So let's listen to Ravi as he uses this approach and determine for yourself whether you think it's very effective.
My own upbringing was so different. It was like my ancestors were Orthodox Hindu priests generations ago, from the highest caste of the Hindu priesthood. I think it is that one verse, one line, that the moral law hangs upon, I am the Lord your God that brought you out of the land of Egypt. That redemption motif, I think it moved beyond the metaphor from Egypt, although it was real. It moved beyond the blood sacrifices, and it moved to the very person of the Son of Man that Daniel talked about, and the perfection of the law, which was not violated, but affirmed and endorsed. So what I see in the person of Jesus Christ are two very real things, Ben. Number one, it is the fact that he embodied that which was the purest, that was called for by this very rigorous 613 system of laws that were given. And if you move down even to Habakkuk, which is then quoted 3 times in the New Testament, from 613, David reduced it to a handful. Isaiah reduced it even more. Micah brought it down to 3, to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly before your God. But the Habakkuk phrase of the just shall live by faith, which I understand is more correctly represented as by his faithfulness, that when you move into the person of Christ, 2 things happen. The law is honored and not debunked, but the relationship question, when you give the 4 propositions in your closing chapter, starting all the way from purpose and then in relationship. The most moving moment in your book is when you talk to your daughter. Okay, I loved it. I'm a grandfather of 5. And my grandson, Jude, brilliant guy. He uses words like hypothesis and all of that. He's turning 8 tomorrow, okay? When my daughter, Naomi, lost her car keys, she stopped going crazy in the house, slapped her forehead and said, I must be losing my mind. Little Jude, who was 5.5 then, stood in front of her and he said, Mommy, whatever you do, please don't ever lose your heart because I'm in there. That personal relationship, as much as I value and love the law, I need to go beyond that relationships. And so here's what I say. The most beautiful moment in the New Testament to me, if I were to choose one moment or 2, first I would want to listen to Jesus' talk on Emmaus Road, because he connects all the dots going back to the beginning. Brilliant history lesson. You would love it, I think, as he talked on the Emmaus Road.
And this is absolutely brilliant, because what he's pointing to is the 330 passages in the Old Testament that were fulfilled by Jesus in the New Testament, which he shared with the 2 people on the road to Emmaus. Absolutely brilliant.
But the second moment was when he was on the Mount of Transfiguration. Who does he bring with him? Moses and Elijah, 2 of the most thundering prophets for whom he was the undertaker. Okay? We don't know exactly what Moses was buried in. Elijah goes up on chariots of fire. But then he goes to the cross. I know I can't pay for myself. The redemptive factor of the purest paying for the impure. Not that there was no penalty, but he paid it and then rises again from the dead. To me, it's a composite that doesn't violate what preceded. I think it completes it. And to me, the attractiveness, and I really appreciate you even giving me the opportunity to share it. Let me give you an illustration of this. I was in Jerusalem some years ago. You may know the name of Moshe Sharon, the well-known scholar on Islamics in Israel. Okay, I was writing a book on an imaginary conversation between Jesus and Muhammad. It'll be released posthumously. So I've got it written, okay? So I'll tell you what he said to me. Great man. He's probably written more on any inscripture in stone than any other human being around there. He looked at me and he said, Mr. Zacharias, you're a very clever man. He said, well, I'll tell you something you don't know. I said, there's a lot I don't know, sir. He said, well, let me tell you something. He said, you don't know about me. He said, I'm now a professor. He said, but I used to work for the Mossad. He said, Mr. Zacharias, you're a Christian. I'm a Jewish man. But we both have one thing in common. I said, what's that? He said, communion with God. I said, you're right. My goal in life is to have communion with God. He said, so is mine. He said, but I picked up extremists who would go and blow themselves up. And what people don't know, he said, they would have a leaden girdle around that midsection so that they could protect what they felt they were going to use in paradise finally. He said, that's a different worldview.
So I think his view and his way of presenting it was highly effective. And I'm just curious to know, what do you think? So let me know, leave comments in the comment section, and please think about liking and subscribing and coming again. This is probably one of the most effective demonstrations that I've seen of Christianity that used all three methods of persuasion from Aristotle: ethos, pathos, and logos. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, and please come again.